The Transformers, as a name brand, has been around since 1984 and has been one of Hasbro's most successful toy lines of all time. With the exception of 1 year in the United States, there hasn't been a time without Transformers toys in the toy aisles. All manner of Transformers, from the tiny to the very large, have been sold at retail with eager fans willing to buy them up. Then in 2018, when Hasbro announced it was starting something called HasLab, which was to make, quote, fan dreams into reality, end quote, as well as other projects that wouldn't sell otherwise at retail. A certain YouTuber in the toy community warned us about what would happen if we allowed this to become a thing. That ship has long since set sail. 7 years and 5 Transformers HasLabs later, with their latest offering being Liokaiser from Transformers Victory, and they decide that basic generation style molds are now considered premium quality. Now, before I go any further, let me say this, and I can't believe I have to actually say this. No one is telling you that you shouldn't buy this. No one is going to be judging you if you decide to buy this. We are all adults here, and we are all allowed to buy whatever we want, regardless if we think it's a good deal or not. I'm just simply explaining why I think this shouldn't have been a HasLab, and why it should have just been a straight-up retail release, even if it's based on a character from a Japanese Transformers series.
Maximum effort.
Let me start off by saying the following. I do think this is a good-looking set of figures. It looks fairly accurate to its animation counterpart, and it's nice that all 6 team members are Voyager-class scale, so that each individual figure is decently sized, and they're all going to be uniformly the same as far as their height goes.
Oh, it's beautiful.
That is where my praises for it come to an end, and I have to begin to explain what is wrong with this set.
And here we go.
First off, for this set containing 6 Voyager-class figures, Liokaiser's Gestalt mode, his combined mode, only comes up to 12 inches tall. That is roughly the same height as your standard Combiner Wars combiner, and that was made up of 1 Voyager and 4 Deluxes.
What? What the fuck?
If we were to compare a combiner team that's the same scale, then there's really only one option we have here, and that's Combiner Wars Devastator. And why am I bringing up Devastator in this? Because it was the only combiner team from the Combiner Wars line where all 6 figures were Voyager class. And when all 6 were transformed into Devastator, he wasn't 12 inches tall. He stood a whopping 18 inches tall.
Whoa, look at the size of it!
Yep, it's a whopper, all right.
That puts him into Titan class territory. Also, there's something else that we need to discuss when it comes to comparing Devastator to Liokaiser, especially with this being the scale, and that is the cost. Hasbro is charging $300 for this HasLab. Granted, there's not going to be as many of this one available as, say, Combiner Wars Devastator, but Devastator, upon his retail release 10 years ago, was only selling for $150. Even if we were to adjust to the current Titan class scale for the current Titan class figures, it would only be $200, $199. Now, even with that price being adjusted, Devastator would still be $100 cheaper than Liokaiser. And we're still talking 6 Voyager class figures here. I know I said there wouldn't be as many of Liokaiser made as Devastator, and that would almost help in its favor if it wasn't for one little detail. When the images for each of the individual figures were being shown, it was clear that they still have mushroom caps and hollow joints. Not only does this make them cheaper to produce, but these all have the signature hallmarks for all Transformers figures that have been made since at least the Generations line. Which means that for a product that's supposed to be of a superior quality to a general release, you're essentially paying approximately over 40% more for these as opposed to a generic release for the Generations line.
Oh, hell no!
Not only are you going to be paying more for a basic figure, but this could give Hasbro an incentive to actually charge more for their basic Voyagers. For the longest time, Voyager class Transformers stayed at a steady price point, starting from Armada to Energon, Cybertron, Classics, the 07 movie, Animated, Universe 2.0, Revenge of the Fallen, Hunt for the Decepticons, Dark of the Moon, Reveal the Shield, Prime, Thrilling 30, and even the very beginning of the Combiner Wars. This class of Transformer stayed at $20. $20. Then partway in 2015, the price point crept up to $25. It stayed that way for a few years until the COVID pandemic hit. Then over the course of less than a couple years, I believe it was like less than 18 months, the price jumped to $30 and then $35 for a single Voyager class. Now, you may be wondering, what does the price point of this particular scale of Transformers have to do with anything?
Oh my god, who the hell cares?
Well, simply put, this version of Liokaiser that HasLab is offering is made up of 6 Voyager class figures, which at $299, before any additional fees are applied, breaks down the cost of each figure to approximately $50 each. And considering how greedy Hasbro can get and has gotten, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if your standard class Voyager Transformer after this HasLab goes from $35 to closer to $50.
Damn!
And in turn, this would cause the prices for the other classes of Transformers to go up as well. Another point I need to bring up with these figures is, while they do look good at first glance, it's evident that they're just generic Generations releases. And what do I mean by that? Well, what's been a couple of hallmarks for any Generation style Transformer for the last decade or so? Hollow parts and mushroom caps. This is where they scrimp and save as much plastic as possible to not only cut costs, but to also make it more cheaply to produce. And these molds are no different. And these are supposed to be higher quality molds, since this is a HasLab project. And speaking of HasLab, something like this shouldn't be a HasLab project. For me, something like Unicron, I can understand being a HasLab project. But now, a simple 12-inch tall combiner is now considered worthy of a HasLab? Meanwhile, you have third-party companies like W Resources in this particular instance offering their version of Fall of Cybertron Metroplex called MO1 Fortress, MO1 Steel Fortress. And they're offering it for pre-orders as of this recording on sites like Big Bad Toy Store. Yes, it's $1,500, but they're at least seeing who all is seriously interested in a figure like this. That is what you call taking a risk. Something that a billion-dollar company like Hasbro doesn't comprehend. If you were to ask me, that 4-foot-tall Metroplex would be an example of a dream project. I mean, what Transformers fan wouldn't want a 4-foot-tall Metroplex or any other bot in their collection?
Is this true? Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Well, let's talk about those unlockable tiers now. Your 3 unlockable tiers being Death Cobra, his electromagnetic nunchaku, and a display stand that's big enough to display all 5 figures individually and combined as Liokaiser. I don't think those should have been unlockable tiers to begin with. Let me tell you why. Number 1, Death Cobra, even though he was only in, I believe it was 2 episodes of Transformers Victory, he's still a member of the team. So why would you want to separate a team member from the rest of his team? Number 2, his electromagnetic nunchaku, considering that is Liokaiser's primary weapon that he uses when he's in battle, especially against Victory Saber. Why would you want to make that as a unlockable tier? What if you don't get to that magical number of, I believe it's 16,000 backers? What if you don't get to that number? Then you're going to have a Liokaiser without his primary weapon. This would be the equivalent of HasLab making a G1 style Optimus and one of his unlockables being his Matrix of Leadership. Do you know how much that would piss off the fans that they have to reach a certain number of backers in order to get something that should have come with him automatically? That would not fly. And last, most certainly not least, the 3rd unlockable tier is that display stand. Now, I know that display stands are cool, and they allow you to display your figure or figures in certain ways, be able to express them in dynamic poses that require support in order to display that pose that you really want to show off. For the price that HasLab is charging for this thing, I believe it should just automatically come with Liokaiser by default. Because you're already being overcharged for this thing as far as I'm personally concerned. Since you're being charged way up the wazoo for this thing, why not just go ahead and include the display stand? I mean, to me, it's the very least that you could do, Hasbro. And now let's get into the price for this thing. Obviously, the price for this thing is $299.99. May as well say $300. And because I was curious how much it would cost your average person to buy, or at least back, their Liokaiser, I decided to take a look for myself. Now, I didn't back one. I stopped just shy of actually backing it, just to see how much it would cost me to back this thing. And considering that I am not a Hasbro Pulse Premium member. I refuse to pay, that fee. Because of that, there is what's called a HasLab surcharge, which is $15.99. In other words, because I am not a Hasbro Pulse Premium member, HasLab is going to charge me an additional $16 just to back this thing. And looking at my order summary right here in front of me. Now, Liokaiser, $299.99. HasLab surcharge, $15.99. Shipping, $6.99 because it's over, I believe it was $75. That $6.99 got taken off. Sales tax, $30.81, which brings us to a combined total of $346.79. Now, I believe it's going off the sales price for the state that I'm in. If you live in a state that has, a higher sales tax, I would imagine that price would be higher. Or if you live in a state with a lower sales tax, that price would be lower. But point is, you're looking at close to $350 if you're not a Hasbro Pulse member just to back this thing. The fact that Hasbro is extorting another $16 from its customers just because they don't want to pay the $50 extortion fee.
Big whoop. Want to fight about it?
Like a 1 hour, 2 hour advantage over other people. That to me is not only predatory, that is just sad. Now, with the exception of Unicron, I can understand that HasLab has been trying to stick with more the typically Japanese Transformers characters. But, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, these characters do not have to be HasLabs. I mean, they're one they had for 2024, Robots in Disguise, Optimus Prime, and Ultra Magnus. I mean, granted, I understand that made a reasonably tall Omega Prime when the two were combined. That should not have been a Hasbro Pulse, not Hasbro Pulse, a HasLab. The fact that I still have my original RID Optimus and Ultra Magnus was reason enough for me to not even consider backing the thing. And if you're about to say, well, they've not introduced any of the Japanese-only characters in the mainline Transformers figures over here, I'm going to stop you right there. Because the obvious ones that have come out have been Sound Blaster, Twincast. Granted, those are repaints of already existing characters. But the biggest name that has had a general release here in the States has been Overlord. And he got released in the Titans Return line. And let me just say, that is just one awesome figure. Now, I don't see how Victory Saber, I don't see how Deathsaurus, or however you pronounce his name, and I most certainly don't see how Liokaiser couldn't have been just general release Transformers. I mean, yes, make them a slightly higher price point, if maybe, but I don't see how those should have been HasLabs. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can complain about as far as this Liokaiser is concerned, but I want to think that is it.
Oh, thank God.
But I know it's just me ranting and, let's just be frank, me bitching about this. But I know I'm not the only one who feels this way about this particular Liokaiser, or the fact that this Liokaiser, more specifically, is a HasLab. Now, I mean, if you feel that this is worth backing as a HasLab, that's cool. If you want to back it, be my guest. I personally will not be backing it. As much as I would love to have this Liokaiser in my collection, I'm just not going to back it. And if you would stay with me stay with my rambling up to this point, I highly appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, listen to some of my points of view about why this shouldn't have been a HasLab to begin with. I want you to tell me down below if you think this still should have been a HasLab. If you think this should have been a general release, tell me in the comment section down below. If you are new to this channel, be sure to hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And turn on that bell so you can get all future notifications for when I do upload new videos. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.